Welcome back to Make It Mental, everybody. What you're looking at right there is a 124 scale RC drag car. I used a motor out of an electric toothbrush, a slot car reduction gear. This drive shaft is a piece from a cheap RC car that I've narrowed and filed down to accept the spur gear and to fit inside those bearings right there. The hot glue you see here on the motor is just to keep the motor from coming up, but it's not necessary. It's such a tight fit in here, an absolute tight fit, that it's not necessary at all. And plus the way the motor spins to make the front tires go, it actually, technically it would be forcing the motor down, so I'm not worried about the motor coming out. I just put this here as a safety precaution in case of an accident. So here is just a basic look, a rundown, what I've got here for the very strange, rather complex suspension. I wanted to use magnetic dampening on this, but there's so little suspension travel because there's only about 3 millimeters of clearance between the bottom here and the surface that it rides on. There's only about 3 millimeters, and maximum ride height with these small dinky tires is just, that's maximum ride height right there. It's just not working, even though I got tons of articulation. I mean, for a 124 scale vehicle, that is plenty of articulation, but obviously useless in this particular case. So I'm going to fix the suspension to be permanent. It's not going to, basically it's not going to have any suspension at all. But this is something to keep in mind for a future build. This is very nice. I've actually had to put these inside to get some negative camber in here. I had them originally on the outside, as you can see by those holes right there. Let's see if it'll zoom in. There you go. There's some 2 outside holes, and you can see everything is hand drilled. And those 2 little screws, those are M2s, so they're very tiny. You can see everything is hand drilled and hand assembled, so not everything is exactly perfect, but it does work. And I did test drive it briefly. It's quite nice. It accelerates quite nice. The motor's a little bit slow in my opinion, but I'm going to address that later. I can always go with a smaller reduction gear, but that means removing the 2 screws. That may be hard to see, but by the motor pinion gear, I'd have to remove those 2 screws. Those 2 screws hold this plate right here to this plate right here. After all, this is basically just an L bracket. It may be hard to discern that here, but you can see how this one rides on the bottom of this one. Right? You can see the 2 L brackets pretty much sandwiched together to squeeze this motor and hold it in place. And that's basically how this works. I did use the cheapest of parts I could possibly find. I've already had extra ESCs. You can find these micro ESCs on Amazon. I don't like Amazon anymore. I quit using them almost a year ago. You can also find them on eBay. That's primarily where I shop for my hobby stuff because I'm way too far away from any hobby store. And servos you can find on Amazon and eBay as well. They're very cheap 9-gram servos. You can see I got some very tricky bends right there to make that steering knuckle work inside that articulated suspension. And because everything is hand drilled and handmade, I've had to notch this out a little bit more to get the same ride height on the front wheels. It may be hard to discern that on camera. But there you go, there's something like that. And I made a custom battery pack. Made a couple of them. I made this lightweight one. Technically it's a 4-cell, but 2 of them are wired together to create a 2-cell, and then these 2 are wired together to create a 2-cell, and then they're wired again together with a small little balance plug. Each one of these little tiny cells is 120 milliamp hour. I'm not sure what the discharge rating is, but it should do just fine for just basically running 55 feet. And what I'm testing it here on my table, it seems to be appropriate. But as you can see, with such minimum ground clearance, my front tires, my front bumper is practically on the ground. So when I decide to build this quarter-mile track, it's going to have to be really, really smooth. It's going to have to, I don't know, it can't have any kind of bumps or deviations in it. If it is, it's going to have to be very gradual, very minimal. But next time you guys see this, I'll give it a little test drive. Right now it's raining outside, so I'll give it a little test drive in my garage sometime in the future. I got to make some body mounts to mount the body, and we'll go from there.